Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here at the first of our 4 digital AdOps webinars that we're running over the next 4 weeks. These replicate and kind of replace the physical AdOps events that we like to run every 6 months. We were due to be in Melbourne this week, in fact, I think, for our regular AdOps event. And these events are aimed at the whole industry, but we like to go into a little more detail in terms of operationally how things work. So they tend to be aimed at AdOps, TechOps, programmatic staff, and have proven very successful. So we wanted to continue them in a virtual manner. So we kick off this week with a plethora of superstars that are joining us. We are looking at cross-screen measurement and open measurement in conjunction with Double Verify. Thank you to them for their support. We'll kick off first with Jill Wittkopp, who's Director of Product over at TechLab, who'll introduce us to open measurements generally, and in particular the Open Measurement SDK and its benefits. Then we'll have a one-to-one between Jill and Imran on cross-media planning before jumping over into a Q&A, a panel with the other participants there. And please feel free to type in questions into the Q&A as we go along, and we'll incorporate them into the flow. But for now, to get us going, I'll hand over to Jill from IAB TechLab. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Let me get my video started. Hello from San Francisco, California. So I'm going to take us through just a brief overview of the Open Measurement SDK, sort of how it came to be, what the problem set that it was trying to solve, and where it's at right now as far as adoption and industry reception. So I'll just, as a quick agenda, I'll do a quick background on who TechLab is, just in case folks aren't familiar. Then, like I said, open measurement, what is it? Go through the SDK in a little bit more detail, just the feature set, what it's meant to do for you, what we're working on now, and what's upcoming, and then talk about that adoption set. So just briefly, for folks who are not familiar with the TechLab, we work globally to engage a member community to really develop technology standards to support the digital media ecosystem. So we are sort of working behind the scenes with local IABs to help support from those technology standards set to enable the programmatic environment. This is just an overview of some of these standards you may already be familiar with. Some things you might see in there that you know: AdSet, TXT, OpenRTB, for Europe, the GDPR Transparency and Consent Framework. These are all just some of the things that we work on. And some people get confused. You know, there's IABs like IAB Australia, then there's also IAB TechLab, and just an overview of how we work together. We definitely support each other in the ecosystem, where IABs work through market development, supporting sales and marketing efforts, and we work in the background globally to support on that product side. So it's more focusing on getting product and engineering folks together to make sure that we have the right people at the table to really develop the technical specifications that we all need to support sort of the collaborative industry. And this is just a high level of what we are working on this year. TechLab has you know, lots of things we could be working on, but these are from, you know, our board members and industry partners that we focus on sort of these top 4 things for 2020. Number 1, as you guys might know, is to focus on enabling a smooth or a privacy-centric consumer ID management and smooth transition into sort of that cookieless environment. A lot of that is happening through Project ReArc, which I think Jonas also hosted Jordan and team, I think, just a few weeks ago. Number two is privacy. Again, top of mind for most people. And then continuing to promote supply chain transparency. That's through our ads.txt efforts, sellers.json, sort of enabling that for new environments like CTV as well. And then last but not least, to improve measurement and attribution accuracy and consistency. And so I'll talk to you guys a little bit today about how we're doing that through the Open Measurement Initiative, but there are certainly other initiatives sort of in support of sort of the first, second, and third objectives as well. So just what is open measurement? I'm going to take us back to 2017. Let's take a step back in time. This was really an initiative to focus on the mobile app environment in 2017. We were seeing a lot of issues with scale of being able to really enable buyers to purchase verified inventory, to really be able to have trust that that measurement was happening and that they could get their preferred verification partners into the mix to be able to get that third-party verification on in-app inventory. And a couple of things that led to that really, SDK development is kind of an undertaking. Like it's generally an entire project in and of itself within companies to keep, to work on an SDK. And that's just the development of it, not really speaking to the integration on sort of the partner side, so publishers. And then there's also the fact that each sort of individual measurement provider or third-party partner really had their own black box SDK. Wasn't a lot of known information about what was happening in there, just knew that measurement came out the other side. And that made it tougher with troubleshooting if something went wrong. It was all proprietary, so you kind of had to go to each individual company you were working with to try and figure things out. There was a lot of inventory with just no SDK. There were reduced measurement rates, not a lot of accuracy. When new SDKs were developed, it was very difficult to get those adopted because there were already very long sort of lines to get SDK updates in place on the publisher side. So it became sort of a never-ending cycle of updates in new SDKs. And really, you had all of your measurement partners competing for the space on that supply side roadmap because everyone wanted to get their SDKs installed, and publishers only had so much bandwidth. So, and basically a lot of them were trying to obtain some of the same signals, like the same event signals. Sure, there were proprietary layers of technology, maybe on top of that, but at the baseline for standard measurement and something like MRC measurement guidelines, there was like a foundational set of events that were trying to be captured. And so, in some cases that was seen as redundancy for sure. And so even this is a quote from MRC where when they released the mobile viewable ad impression measurement guidelines, there was definitely support for some type of collaborative open source industry effort to really try and address some of these challenges with being able to really achieve viewable measurement in the mobile space. And so that's sort of how OM SDK, the project, was born. So it was definitely brought forward as a solution to a lot of those challenges, where we would really have a single SDK, a single integration for app developers to be able to enable the measurement parties that they needed to for themselves, for buyers. They could pick from a host of partners without having to install proprietary SDKs for each one. And that was, a big push forward in being able to bring measurement scale to mobile in-app advertising, because you just really were taking away a lot of the roadblocks. And this is just an overview on the left here of how the SDK works from an app perspective. So you have the mobile app, and then you have the Open Measurement SDK, which it calls what is called the OMID API. And that's the open measurement interface definition. And that is really just the most sort of standardized set of events that are shared then via the measurement provider tags in the ad creative. And those tags still send that data to the measurement provider servers, and you're able to get your verification, your measurement reports. And this is just an overview on the right. You'll see these are some of our commit group members. So we have a couple, this isn't a small effort. It's definitely a large effort in the industry. So we have these commit group members who not only commit their time, but they also commit their resources, where each group has product and engineering leads that work on this project and actually develop code, decide on features, scope features, and we build and support this for the ecosystem through the support of these companies, of which DoubleVerify is one. And so what does open measurement ultimately do? Like I said, it gives it's designed to give equal data access to all vendors. So you can, that OMID API, it has a standardized set of events, raw events that it's sending. And you, like any vendor, can sort of develop the technology to be able to call into that and get those signals enabled by the buyer or publisher. So it's really also, I mean, to address some of the other concerns that I listed in the previous slide, because it's open source, it facilitates adoption and innovation and troubleshooting through sort of working group access. So we don't only have the commit group that directly commits to development of the SDK, we actually also have an even larger working group, which is probably about 200 folks that once they're part of a working group, they actually can look at the source code, make suggestions that get raised to the commit group for ultimate sort of development decisions. But there's definitely a lot more transparency here. And that's really led to much more industry adoption. It's also, I mean, we took sort of the best of, we had sort of all of the players at the table who have been doing a lot of this SDK development. So we really took the best of what everyone had to offer to really protect the user experience and really enhance the developer experience and really eliminate a lot of the friction that we were seeing and getting to a more measurable place in mobile. And this is just a high-level overview of the current feature set. So right now, and you'll see this in another slide, right now we are live and as I said, focused on in-app. So we have an SDK for iOS and for Android, and then there's sort of a JavaScript package that goes with that. But those are sort of the SDKs that are currently available. I'll go through in the next couple slides what else we're working on, but we support, as you can see, HTML native and JavaScript ad sessions, native display, video, audio creatives, support friendly obstructions for viewability, when there are video player overlays, to be able to count those as friendly obstructions as opposed to like fully obstructing the ad view. VAST support, player volume and device volume are supported. We recently added support for the MRC definition of begin to render. And you can see that on the right-hand side, a lot of the very specific events that go into that calculation. So sort of if the ad is loaded, the begin to render definition, 1 pixel, viewable, audible. So there's a lot there to sort of capture that set of raw events that are needed to make those measurement calculations. Oh, and the last one there, sorry, I almost skipped over that one. The most recent release too supported declaration of a content URL in which the ad is being shown to the user to help sort of start I would say, start the move towards brand safety and suitability. And so this just gives you an idea of how sort of I focused a lot of this conversation and everything on in-app, and that is absolutely sort of the initial problem set that we focused on. That was where the pain was felt initially, and we have we've come a long way there. So we've also, like, I want to highlight with this slide that the architecture is such that we are really set up for fairly easy or lightweight ability to be able to move to additional environments. So you can see on the left here, we have the SDK for Android, SDK for iOS, as I already said, feeding into and calling this OM API. The API itself is actually already enabled for web video events. Excuse me, but we have not yet released a standardized web video SDK. And so that is definitely sort of, it's on the roadmap, in progress, 2020 release. That one is on its way. And then the other one that we have sort of just initially started scoping and starting to understand the different development options available is, of course, for CTV. But all of those, the great part is that it'll just be about what the actual SDK for the device or screen will be. And then we will use the underlying API for all of those. So that piece is already enabled and already there. And it's much easier then to add these additional channels into the mix. And this is just an overview of global adoption. So 60 plus companies certified globally, over 250 downloads of the SDKs. So those, you come to the Tech Lab tools portal and download those packages. So we can track that way how many people are sort of in the middle of investigating, you know, the integration and what that would look like. But these are a bunch of certified companies. You can definitely see some big players out there. And as just a highlight on how that adoption has been growing. So as I started this back in 2017, when the sort of measurability of in-app inventory was minimal. And this is, you know, as part of the commit group, our members actually help to promote and provide data on adoption and trends and what they're seeing that helps feed back into our development cycle. So DoubleVerify has provided this study that's actually available on their website. And you can see the stark increases even from something like Q1 2019 to Q1 2020, where for OM SDK video, we saw a 362% increase. And even at that point, just in Q1 2020, there were 6 additional certified partners for OM SDK. So I would definitely say we're in a good place with the adoption. We're seeing what we want for in-app, and I mean, there's always more. There's always more inventory to cover, but we have sort of amazing adoption there. And are headed on to continue the cross-screen to world domination, I guess.
Jill, thank you so much. So we will, I'll just say a couple of things before we jump into the next session with Imran, the country manager at DoubleVerify, and Jill, who'll be staying on. So just a couple of points there. I mean, firstly, it's wonderful to have Jill involved today. We're involving her in a couple of weeks too, and perhaps a couple of other Tech Lab product people. So look out for that. We'll be keeping Jill very busy. And in fact, in terms of the forthcoming release that Jill mentioned there, we will be providing some local education and awareness around that, because the impact on both open measurement, but also VAST. And we will probably incorporate that into the event in AdOps, the AdOps event in Sydney, where hopefully we can physically get at least some of us all together, which is in late September. So Jill will just have to fly you out for that one, I think. I mean, bear in mind, it's good to remember the relationship between the IABs globally and IAB Tech Lab. And we feel here in Australia and across APAC, but really in Australia, we're really well looked after. We have the opportunities of weekly check-ins. I'm given that option. We have regular monthly and quarterly product updates from the team. And, you know, you can see the scale of collaboration and support that the Tech Lab can pull together. You know, they have working groups of 200 plus. Whereas, you know, we're glad to be able to get 20 in a room, although I know we all like to think we punch well above our weight. Be able to, you know, leverage that level of IP experience and technical expertise really is a godsend for us here. So it can't be understated. It really can't be overstated. It really is so important to us. All right, now to flesh out the details of the commercial opportunities in relation to this, I invite Imran in now to have a one-to-one chat with Jill, and please keep sending your questions through. We'll incorporate them into the panel to follow. Worry not. Thanks very much.
Thanks, JJ. Hope everyone can hear me. That was really great. Kind of reset of where we're at with the OM SDK. Jill, thanks very much, and thanks for having us here. We had a few questions, Jill, I wanted to kind of go through with you, and off the back of that presentation, actually, there's some really interesting insights, and I think for probably quite a few people that have joined this session, some of that information will be quite new. If you think about when the IAB started this back in 2016, I think 17, there's probably a fair few new people that have joined the industry, or this area of the industry. So a lot of that was probably new information, which is great. I wanted us to like have a bit of a conversation around, firstly, how are we going to scale, or what are IAB doing to develop the adoption of the initial OM SDK for in-app? And then also, what does that mean for planners or for agency or for in-house buying teams on the brand side? Like how can they think about the digital ecosystem now at a broader level, because all of a sudden there's potentially more inventory available that there's consistency in measurement and accuracy that they can then see the performance or the quality of that inventory. So my first question really is, what are the obstacles that publishers currently are facing with the deployment of the OM SDK? We've seen quite a considerable uptake over the last 12 months. But on that slide 12 you presented, there was we haven't seen any major Australian publishers. So are there challenges that publishers still face to implement that across their platforms, and what are they?
Yeah, I mean, so as I said, we kind of removed a lot of the glaring obstacles that we were faced with at the time. But that doesn't mean new obstacles don't pop up. And so part of that is, you know, continued education and sort of getting the message out there that this is available. And this is, I mean, there is a lot of documentation associated with the integration. So really helping folks find their way through that. And really, I mean, there's still, even though, you know, we've removed a lot of the barriers of having to install 6 SDKs. This is still a new SDK. So they have, you know, publishers have something, like they have some partners chosen, some running. And in some cases, this is a replacement job. Like this is a lift. So to some extent, it is still getting on the publisher roadmap. And, you know, new things that are discovered, I would say those do come up. They're generally brought to the working group, and then we, if they're not features already, you know, we address them and can evaluate them for further development to try and even further sort of ease that integration in a next release.
Okay, and when we think about like the Australian publishers specifically, because you know we're in our market, you know, I think there may be potentially 10 major publishers in Australia that might represent about 80% of the inventory or potentially more. When we're working with them in Australia, or when the IAB are working with them in Australia, what are those recommendations, and what are the recommendations the IAB are making to those specific publishers? Because ultimately for the industry to be better, we want to have consistency in measurement, regardless of operating system, regardless of device or channel. That will sit somewhere along their priority list of things to do this year. Obviously, it's a crazy year this year, but how are the IAB working with publishers on trying to prioritize this and expedite that adoption? Because ultimately, it's difficult for agencies or for brands to start looking at different ways of planning and buying media if the adoption is not there right now.
Yeah. So I'll say I'll attack that, I think, in two ways. So one, we definitely are working with publishers to, as I said, if they bring up issues that they see with or obstacles, I would say, to integration that we can solve in a technical manner, like we are open to addressing those, and we work with publishers on a regular basis to hear those. But also, I would say that we have developed a roadmap such that it addresses some of those longer term concerns, and sort of, I would say it's more of a carrot approach to say, hey, there are these other new features, like I said, about the OMID API really being the underpinning that can get access to additional channels. So like if a publisher has both an app and web presence, that we can help streamline between the two of those using the OMID API and the upcoming release of the web SDK. And then actually I do have a third one too, sorry, two pieces there. And then the last thing I'd say is that it also comes to the buy side to ask for that. Prioritization is a tough thing to do with any tech roadmap. So I don't envy the job. And it's really about where your partners, and especially partners that sort of are paying for things that are economically benefiting you, are asking for things, because that will definitely help to change roadmap priorities.
On that, actually, I just saw a question come through from one of the participants, and it said, can we provide an example of a tech issue that a publisher is facing around the deployment of this? And if not, we can always follow up on that later on.
Yeah, I don't know that I actually have one off the top of my head. I don't think that I have anything, like there's nothing sitting in the backlog right now that folks are waiting for. Okay. I will just say that's the nature of sort of the development cycle of how some of the features that exist have come to be.
Probably like in answer to that point, or in answer to that question, in one of the slides you had, you spoke about the open architecture to start with, and how then that drills down into different environments, be it mobile, in-app, web, or CTV. So the overarching architecture that's been developed by IAB and the partners is to facilitate across multiple publishers or publishers at a global level. And so in theory, they're right now, based on the last couple of years of development, there may be not right now any technical issues that we can see for publishers to deploy.
Yeah, I will. The in-app SDKs are fairly mature right now. So I mean, they've been in development or developed for a few years. I think when we see the release later this year of SDK for web, that'll be sort of a new experience as far as just putting a new product into market, getting some initial feedback, and making some changes and updates before it rolls out on a larger scale.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good. That's good. And then I suppose we're going to move a little bit more to around what does, if we think holistically about potentially the deployment of all these SDKs across the different environments, and when we're looking at complete cross-screen measurement, when we have CTV enabled, and I read an interesting stat earlier on today that since COVID, the consumption of CTV content has grown 40%. And so, that just means consumers are really engaging in that space. So for brands to want to engage with those consumers now, it's even more relevant than any time. So, when we do have that the open measurement deployed across all environments, is there been comparable metrics we can have as a digital industry to traditional maybe media. So for example, in Australia, TV is measured by OzTam, the OzTam ratings panel. And when we start looking at video across the screen, across platform, whatever that is there a consistency in metric that a brand can hold our industry accountable for?
Well, I will say right now we've been focused on a lot of the MRC guideline metrics and sort of pieces there. So something like, and a lot of them are video based. So, you know, any of the standard metrics that you're looking for as far as loading, begin to render, quartile measurement of a video, any audio measurement that might be associated with that. Those events, you know, should be the same and sort of captured the same for, you know, a video on any of those channels on any device. And that's really what the API is standardizing. So I'd say as far as regional specifics, like regional enhancements, I'd say we're open to hearing those and sort of looking into any potential feature sets there. But the initial focus has been really standardizing across that MRC sort of list.
There was another question that just came in that I think was steered towards IAB and the partners, saying, would open measurement be adopted in the existing measurement capability by partners like DV or others, or does this require a fresh start? I can probably answer that from a DV perspective, and maybe you can have a point of view as well. So the way I would see it is that the technology or the kit, the SDK, is being deployed on a publisher side, and what that enables is a consistency in data from the publisher to the buyer. When we look at the technology on the buy side that's going to discuss or going to show the accuracy of that inventory, or the measurement of that inventory, and the quality of that inventory, it's really about how each individual company extracts that data and looks at it in different ways, right? So some businesses may be able to look at both the data coming from OM SDKs and look at it across from a viewability space, or from brand safety, or from fraud, or all in one. But it's not it's not a redesign or re-architecture for the independent parties or the measurement parties in the industry. This is more about how can, while we're taking data in or pulling data in from the publisher side, how can we have a consistency in that data so we can report or help brands measure that more accurately and across a more scaled ecosystem. And that's kind of like how I would answer that question. I don't know, Jill, if you have another way of
I would say that for that publisher, like on the publisher side, it is a new SDK to implement. But as I said, it's really about consolidating that sort of tech SDK maintenance roadmap, because previously a publisher may have had, you know, 4 or 5, however many partners they want to work with, they might have had that many different SDKs that they were maintaining. And so this is a new SDK, as in there is a one-time lift there, but then they get access to all of those partners, you know, whichever ones they want to enable. So there is work, but it is, I'd say, long-term more beneficial, and long-term less maintenance overall, because you're maintaining one SDK as opposed to X SDKs.
Yeah, and I also think like on that side, like, you know, there's 2 very distinct value propositions from the adoption of this, both from the buy side and the sell side. One is that the publishers can actually have a clear view or consistent view across all of their supply, regardless of device or ecosystem that it's operating in terms of the quality that you want to be able to measure, the industry wants to measure, and they can then demand or ask for a fair price in the market for that. Once their inventory is accurately and consistently measured, the market can then decide, really, like, is that the price that's just? Whereas right now, the lack of adoption of that SDK in some cases can mean that businesses are only seeing less than 20% of your inventory, dependent on where that supply sits, right? So as a publisher, you're probably not maximizing your potential in terms of revenue from that side. And from the buy side, it gives a agency or a brand that opportunity just to accurately see a consumer, regardless of what device they're on or operating system they're on, and purchase that consumer knowing that it's based on the audience targeting that the agencies will have planned and strategized against, but knowing that then also the quality of that media is accurate. It's a viewable impression, or it's a brand safe impression, or it's a fraud free impression. So it definitely offers it offers value for both sides of the ecosystem, and it ultimately allows us to scale outcomes or scale results for clients. And by creating that scaled, measurable, or consistent and measurable ecosystem. I'm gonna flick on to just or move on quickly, just in the interest of time. We spoke a little bit about Project Rearc, and I was just wondering, are there a number of like specific measurement related business cases that are being fed into Project Rearc? As we look to as the IAB and the industry is looking to manage, you know, the loss of third-party cookies by 2022. Could you give us a little bit of an update there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tech Lab has definitely taken the measurement cases, business cases very seriously, to the extent that earlier this year, we actually hired a VP of measurement and attribution. So Angelina joined the team, and she is sort of solely focused on those business cases. Because, you know, first thing everyone thinks about when the, you know, announcement for loss of third-party cookies comes through is that I won't be able to target an audience. I won't be able to, you know, do X, Y, and Z. But then, you know, the second thing that it gets there quickly, but it's generally the second thought is like, oh, wait, that's also how I measure my entire campaign performance. Like there's so much more there. So she's been working really with a working group to put together, honestly, a whole host of business cases that are available and being sort of funneled into the business cases presented through Project Rearc.
Okay, that's great. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask two more questions before JJ or Jonas decides to cut it off. The first question is, and we got in from the participants, was, does the OM SDK for Android work in Android TV, i.e. CTV?
Not yet.
Okay, that's part of the roadmap?
It's part of the the discussions and sort of following that through. And we actually have a subgroup, I'll say right now, that's working specifically on what the CTV SDKs will look like. We haven't decided on sort of a final layout for that, just thinking through like the multiple devices, different environment requirements, and that type of thing.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask a question about operations and operational efficiency, because obviously it's a webinar and it's a series about operations, AdOps. So we know we've got a pretty good idea about what's happening around the adoption and the operational weight needed on the publisher side, that there's separate SDKs based on environments. On the brand side or on the measurement side, you know, DV have an omni-tag solution, so you just deploy one tag and you can access that data regardless of the environment across all environments. But this may not be the case, or may not be common practice across all technology or in businesses in the industry. And some vendors may offer different types of solutions for the buy side, so on the measurement and the reporting side. What challenges does this create for advertisers and publishers operationally if there's multiple tags to be deployed on both sides?
That part is still, I mean, the tag needs to, the vendor tag does need to be associated with the creative. So there is, I mean, that sort of that manual sometimes process that needs to happen, depending on the vendor and depending on sort of how that's set up. So it's certainly there. I would say the, you know, ability to use a single tag cross should help to streamline that. But the tag, you know, to be able to get the measurement partner to call into the OMID API, that tag does need to be present with the creative. So it is sort of the buy side task to make sure that's there.
Okay, so there's still either manual automated requirements on the buy side to ensure that the data is being extracted from the SDKs regardless. So it's really about either the buying team or the brand, the agency, if it's in-house, whatever, to really understand what that means, and probably work with the IAB with their publishers, or with them, like their tech vendors.
It's generally with the measurement provider. Generally, the partner is most able to give the exact requirements for their specific solution.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a million, Jill.
Yeah, thank you.
Over time, I generally do. JJ, you can cut me off. And thanks very much again, Jill.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. Thank you. We will now jump to a wider panel. We'll give Jill a bit of a rest for a while, though she's very much involved, worry not. We'll incorporate the questions as they come through. And thanks, Imran, for including a couple already. That's excellent. I'd love just to introduce Amy from Wavemaker, and we have Lee from Double Verify and John from Verizon Media to beef up the panel for the rest of this session. And I've got a few questions to ask, and then we'll incorporate the questions from all of you attendees. Bear in mind, I'll mention again that once we have that release coming out from Tech Lab in July or August, we'll do a bit more work in this area in terms of implementation benefits and also integration. Because in response to, it was a question from the attendees around some of the technical pain points for publishers. It's not, what I have heard in market is not directly related to the integration of the OM SDK per se, but it's all the other vendors that are involved if you want to ensure that all the signals are passed and everything's working cleanly with everyone else that has to integrate. That has caused some problems with certainly one or two publishers here that I'm aware of. So what we'll try and do is provide some support and guidance for everyone that's involved in this, and ensure that Tech Lab are involved in that, and perhaps we can touch upon that in this panel. But I'm also going to open up the screen so you can see everyone's faces. I think that's a little more human. I'm going to start actually with you, Amy, to get a buyer's perspective on open measurement, and whether we see there being a real potential to surface more transparent and accountable digital opportunities across all screens.
Of course. I think from an agency point of view, the ultimate aim for measurement is for us to help clients understand where their money is being spent, and also if it's being spent effectively. So from my perspective, I think better standards of data sharing and standardization are needed across a lot of areas of digital. So given our open measurement uses a standardized multiple tech providers, this is really helping us in reducing the complexity in tracking, and in turn allows us to pass on as much information as possible onto our clients about their digital buys. And it's exciting to hear, as Jill mentioned, you know, they've addressed a lot of the issues that came up in 2017, and the developments coming around web video and CTV are really going to be quite impactful across that full screen approach. And we support anything that's going to simplify the digital ecosystem for our clients.
Fantastic. And essentially the same question for you, Lena, but more from the vendor's perspective in terms of the operational capabilities and benefits that you can see you being able to provide your clients.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think as Jill mentioned before, you know, at DV, we've been, you know, part of this OM SDK initiative from the start. And it's really our goal to create, you know, a transparent media environment, you know, for every party involved. So whether it's brands, agencies, publishers, you know, and one of the things that we do promote, you know, demand side with our clients is the targeting of OM SDK compatible inventory, but then also helping to facilitate with the integration from a supply side. I think as an industry, you know, year on year, we're seeing this increased demand coming from agencies and advertisers for this transparency in terms of their digital media buys. and making sure that their ads are appearing in a context that's relevant for their target audience, but then also, an environment that's preserving their reputation. So, I definitely think initiatives like the OM SDK, are crucial in making sure that, that transparency is there, and that measurement is possible in all the different buying environments. So I think, we talked about viewability and, viewability transparency, but, open measurement also helps to provide buyers with significant visibility into other key metrics. So things like performance metrics, so being able to see, number of ad views, time viewed that they saw across their impressions, the impressions served. And then it also creates that consistency that we see between all the different parties involved, and really helps to align performance and measurement. And, in addition to this, I think, we're seeing it's becoming increasingly more important for advertisers to have this visibility into the environments they're appearing against, not only from a, contextual relevance standpoint, from an audience perspective, but as well, to be able to capture and measure campaign engagement and performance.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great comprehensive answer. And I think, philosophically, this collaborative approach and this open source approach for solutions that are good for each of, let's face it, the vendors involved, but good for the industry and good ultimately for both buyers and sellers is exciting.
Sorry, JJ, to jump in from a tech perspective, because I think it's worthwhile with what Lena and Jill and the team are saying. At Verizon, we're lucky to be on both demand and supply. So we own the Flurry SDK, and that was an early adopter of open measurements, and we reap the benefits almost instantly because we've got loads of developers using that, and then we've got our owned and operated content that reap that benefit as well. So on the buy side with the DSP, it ingests these additional signals, and there was a fear that in the industry that the more transparency into the supply, sending those data signals to DSPs, there'd be a fear that performance would be an issue and things like that because lack of adoption. But the adoption of the Open Measurement SDK has reached a point now where that's no longer a fear, and we're definitely seeing more DSPs provide the control of turning on and off targeting supply with Open Measurement SDK. So for example, with our buying platform, we can see exactly what publishers are doing, and it actually ingests those signals to what Lena was saying. So it helps with performance, it helps understand all sorts of things around the publishers and giving the buyers the control to do that kind of stuff. So we're seeing really good progress on that front.
Actually, I might extend that point out to you, Amy, just in terms of, are you seeing adoption across all the DSPs? Is there a commitment from buy side tech to support these standards and the SDK?
Yeah, from my end, I don't specifically buy in the DSPs. However, our programmatic teams have noticed that each of the DSPs are approaching it in slightly different ways. And there's constant updates and changes in this space. So the role that we play, and especially our programmatic traders, is to stay close to each of those nuances and ensure that we make those inventory decisions based on what's right for the clients and their objective. As I think Imran mentioned in some of his talk, there's some manual, things that need to happen. So it's trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah, and again, we'll try and provide a bit more information and support around that with the forthcoming release. It's an opportunity to get together on it and liaise with Tech Lab on that. And one more point for you, Lena, around consistency of metrics for you as a measurement provider. Is that something that you see as a real benefit to be able to help build the sort of same consistent metrics?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I think, Imran and Jill kind of touched upon it before, but I do think that there's a lot of positive impacts in having these consistencies, both from a buyer and a publisher perspective. I think, if we talk about it from a publisher side, it gives them, with the same view advertisers see, and then also gives them with the flexibility to just how their inventory is packaged and sold, you know, and making sure that it appeals to both brand and consumers. It also helps to, you know, reduce some of those discrepancies that we see between measurement companies and publishers, you know, helping to level the playing field in terms of the way that we're measuring the inventory. I think, you know, if we look at it from an agency and an advertiser perspective, you know, it helps to reduce those measurement inconsistencies, you know, making it easier for advertisers to get these consistent media qualities across all environments. And lastly, I think it helps to really understand how inventory and content is perceived, you know, so that publishers and advertisers' needs, you know, can align. And it helps to, you know, further promote efficiency and effectiveness of campaigns. I think, you know, at the end of the day, a transparent buying environment benefits everyone. It helps to, you know, promote yield, and then it helps to also drive, you know, ROI for clients.
I'm going to come to you, John, in a moment around something that's non-open measurement related. But I feel like we've neglected you now a bit, Jill, having overused you for the first half of this, and now I've just abandoned you. So in terms of what's to come next for the OM SDK, will we see the capabilities evolve further into execution beyond just viewability to include brand safety and ad fraud as well?
I think that's very likely. As I said, we have a working group right now for CTV, but we also have one that's most specifically focused on an ad swapping mechanism right now. So one of the hurdles to something like brand safety is not just knowing that, you know, that's not where you want your ad to show, but also sort of having a mechanism in place so that a publisher can potentially get a different advertiser in that may not have the same suitability requirements, or have different, or maybe a house ad, you know, what might that look like? And so some type of mechanism to see like what that kind of swap in real time could look like. So that's what we're investigating. We haven't committed anything to the roadmap at that time, but it's definitely something that's come up by the working group and commit group. So we'll see where it takes us.
And sort of philosophically, if we sort of delve further into this collaborative commitment, would we also start weaving audience measurement metrics in as well? Will it become the sort of be all and end all, or am I getting too far ahead of myself again?
What do you mean? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more when you say, did you say audience?
So here, for instance, we oversee with Nielsen the daily audience metrics, where you measure visits, unique visits, total visits, and all the rest of it that buyers can log in to the console and utilize. And we have a council here that oversee that and keep them honest on all the monthly data. Being able to incorporate all of those signals as well, that if they're actionable through this, would be amazing.
I haven't heard that yet, but you know, it's sort of anything is possible. I'll leave it
in my fantastical future. Well, talking actually of things moving forwards, John. In terms of you know, the phasing out of third-party cookies 2022, what do you feel the opportunities and challenges in relation to that will be for cross-media measurement?
The big topic about the cookie apocalypse. I think we've talked about that a lot recently. But yeah, look, cross-media measurement isn't purely just about viewability and performance metrics. It brings up really big topics around single audience view and attribution. We're seeing a convergence of media types at the moment, with traditional to digital, particularly around audio, with radio and TV to digital, with BVOD out of home to digital out of home. And what we've really seen is the changing of consumer behaviors is massive right now, and the pandemic's been a bit of a petri dish for this, right? We've been going in this direction about how, as consumers, we're engaging a lot more with digital screens and content and all sorts, but it's really ramped up significantly, and really about what this has done is it's bringing us new types of virtual applications, whether it's AR or VR, you know, with esports, e-gaming, medical, education, what have you. So our consumer behaviors are changing, and the applications are coming thick and fast with internet, IoT devices and things like that. So there's going to be lots of different types of measurement required and data signals to be ingested. particularly, with the likes of even digital out of home, for example, and measurement and what that will look like from a verification perspective and things like that. But yes, first-party data powering identity for households in the future of measurement is going to be a big piece, right? With the lack of cookies and being able to do simple things around measurement there. But that's a totally different topic, and we could talk about that for ages. I think it's also really important that we're, as an industry, responsible for working with regulators to make sure that we're using data in the right way. And without measurement to provide level of personalization or contextual relevance, we lose the ability to add value to the consumer, and therefore, the free internet comes into question again and gets jeopardized. So yeah, it's a big topic, one I could talk about with a lot of passion for a long time, but yeah, there's a lot happening in this space.
And obviously on that one, feel free for everyone to jump in with the work that we're doing in conjunction with Tech Lab on Project REARC. There are two technical working groups that we're involved with there. One's accountability, one's addressability. In terms of adoption from media owners here in Australia, I mean, I know personally there's been a lot of interest, but in terms of getting the SDKs in train, if I could ask you, Amy, from your perspective, I mean, one would assume you would want to see greater adoption and a higher prevalence of SDKs across all of the quality supply that you want to be able to provide your clients access to.
Yeah, of course. I think as much as we can standardize the data sharing is beneficial for us and our clients. And, even if we talk about, justifying how much we should pay for things, all of those metrics enables us to justify to clients how much they should be paying for certain inventory. So for sure, definitely aligned to getting as many people adopted as possible.
Thank you. As this is our AdOps event, there's one last. Well, there's a couple of questions which are related to the operational in terms of reduced discrepancy percentages and conversion pixels functioning more efficiently in app by the OM SDK, where previously it has been a bit clunky. So I don't know if there's if that's one for either Jill or Lena to touch upon, just in terms of the efficiency of pixels and reduced discrepancy between different platforms, reporting platforms. Is that to be? Can one assume that is the case? Lena, perhaps start with you.
Yeah, so I can definitely provide perspective from a DV standpoint. All of our technology at the moment is pixel free. So we record metrics based on, impressions and those types of main measurement metrics, viewability signals. But I think in terms of, anything to do with pixel firing, I might hand that over to Jill, given that within DV, we don't capture those data points, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm trying to, read the question a little bit more to see if I can glean anything else, because we are, the metrics itself in the Open Measurement SDK are really focused on, I would say more earlier in the funnel. So looking at, was the ad viewable, making sure to measure sort of the front end. So not really on the conversion pixel side. The other one, as far as the discrepancy between, I'm assuming that's like between different partners. So if you're measuring with, a couple measurement providers, I believe there's still some, but it's very minor. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can try and look at that and maybe get that back to you, JJ, for.
Yeah, I mean, at least all the vendors are seeing the same signals, the same inventory, right?
Yeah.
The discrepancies between the reporting probably still do exist based upon the approach and various parameters utilized, but you'd think that it's a lot cleaner as a result. Yeah, but we can follow up on that. And thank you so much. So look, we are out of time. We've gone over 12 o'clock. I want to thank the panel. Thank you so much to all of you for your time today. and in particular Jill. We'll be keeping Jill busy, as I mentioned. She'll be helping us with one of our forthcoming events. And in fact, next week we do have our we're looking at all things programmatic along with pragmatic. So we're looking at optimizing yields across all devices, but we'll be looking specifically at video, OTT, CTV, and implementing header bidding and running it across concurrently across all devices. But for now, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much for everyone participating. And thank you very much in particular to Jill over in San Francisco, where it's now about 7 p.m. So have a lovely evening. And for everyone in Australia, thank you and have a lovely day.